Hi everyone, here I am in section 1.4 and our learning outcome says differentiate among the three parts of taxonomy. So taxonomy is the study of classification, identification, and nomenclature. So what the heck does that mean? Classification, we talked about a little bit already in the previous topic, and we were talking about remember what this is called? This organization of organisms was called the three-domain system, and where we had bacteria, archaea, and eukaryota, or eukarya, you could say. And so what this was is it was an organization of how these organisms are related through evolution, or what organisms are related to each other, which are in the same families. And so here we talk about that just to help us understand organisms better. And so we classify them, we put them in groups, we give them names to define those groups. Identification is what it sounds like. When you have an infection, you want to know what organism's causing the infection. What is it? And there's different ways that we actually identify bacteria and other microorganisms. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those kinds of things later in the semester. And in fact, we do a little bit of a lab where we identify some bacteria. So that's an important part of taxonomy. How is it related to other organisms? What actually is it? Can we figure that out? And then the final part is nomenclature. How do we give it a name? And there actually are very well-defined rules for naming all organisms, and particularly microorganisms. So nomenclature are the rules for giving organisms names. Now, you're used to, when we look at living organisms, we're used to looking at dogs, and we call them dogs, and we see oak trees, and they have a nice name, and all the different birds have all different names. And so we do a lot of, we name everything, but there actually is a scientific way to name things. So for every organism that has a common name, like a cardinal, it also has a scientific name. And so the scientific names are written as binomial names. So the next learning outcome is correctly write the binomial name for microorganisms. Most microorganisms don't have common names because we don't talk about them in ways that we're just, pointing them out. There's an oak tree. And so we generally use these scientific names, the binomial name. And so here's a kind of bacteria. It's called Helicobacter pylori. And here's a scanning electron microscope picture where that it's been colored with a computer, because they're not really green, but they're easy to see. But you can see that these are very curly bacteria. And it turns out, so this bacterial name, the first word is called the genus, the second one's called the species. And when we go to name these organisms, there's actually different ways we name them. And for example, the name might be descriptive or honor a scientist. Now, sometimes these descriptions in the names don't seem obvious to us because when this binomial system of nomenclature was developed, the language of science was Latin. So a lot of the names sound Latin, and if you don't speak Latin or you don't understand Latin, you might not understand where the name came from. But this particular bacteria, Helicobacter pylori, it's helical, so it may be descriptive, meaning the cells have a helical shape. Notice that when we go back, they're kind of curved, and we call that helical. So these cells have a helical shape, and then they also they use the word pyloric, and it turns out that this bacteria was actually found in the stomach. So the names are then Latinized, and this is used worldwide. These are names that no matter what language you speak, you would use this name. So they turned it into Helicobacter pylori. And then what you do is you capitalize the genus. Remember, we said the genus is the first word. So the genus is capitalized, and the specific epithet, actually, we're going to call this the species, starts with a lowercase letter. So Helicobacter pylori, we change it to that. And then finally, you take the whole thing and you either italicize it or you underline it. And you can see here Helicobacter pylori italicized or Helicobacter pylori underlined Typically when I handwrite, I underline, and when I type, I italicize. If I had to type and underline, I'd have to highlight and then put a break there and then highlight. It's just more steps than I want to do. But you italicize or underline, you don't do both. I'm going to stop that right there and go on to for the next topic on another video.